You think he can lead the Jags to the playoffs?
I do. I think he can, and I think it's because of exactly what everyone suspects, that Nick Foles magic thing. Now, that can't exist in a vacuum. It's not like Nick Foles magic, that stuff that he does, or the fact that guys like to play with him and for him, and he's obviously a great leader. It's not that he can take an inferior team and suddenly presto changeo make it good. He's not that kind of player. But if you have a team that can do some things, particularly run the ball, and if you look at the Jags' offensive line, one of the things you've noticed throughout the years, the offensive line has been playing better and better. And you have a running back, which they do. And you have defensive talent, which they do. Foles' presence has already shown that he can make those things gel. And he can lead a team like that. Now, they're 4-5. That's not great, and they're not going to win the division. But if you look at the rest of their schedule, just like look at upcoming games, they get a bye week. Then at Colts, okay, the Colts are good. They're not great. At Tennessee, very winnable game. They get Tampa Bay. They get the Chargers at home. So it's not like the biggest piece of cake schedule ever, but those are all winnable games coming up. And so it's not like Nick Foles is going to take an inferior team and beat these super teams because Nick Foles is under center now. But if you have the elements I mentioned now on a team, and you have that kind of schedule, yeah, Nick Foles, he's already shown in multiple seasons late in the season, for a team that was floundering, that looked like, last year at least, that looked like, oh, they may not make the playoffs, but they had some of the elements I just mentioned, he can put them over the top. I absolutely think Nick Foles can lead them to the playoffs.
I disagree with you. I don't think there's any way in hell that's happening, and it's for a couple of reasons. Regardless of Nick Foles and his heroics, and I'm not going to summarily dismiss that, you have to take into consideration that they're 4-5. They're 2 games back of Houston, who's already beaten them twice this year. So since you've already lost 2 games to Houston, you'd have to get a 3-game edge on them over the last 7 weeks. I don't see that happening. You do have 2 games against Indy. I don't see them winning both of those games. Maybe they'll split 1-1. I don't see the split of 2. And then you scour the rest of the AFC. You look at Oakland. You look at the Chargers. You look at Kansas City. You look at the Buffalo Bills. I think the combination of all those things, we can't even ignore the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's coming up the rear on the Baltimore Ravens, 2 games behind, but still at 4-4. I think it's a hole, even though it's not insurmountable per se. I think it's a hole that's too deep for them to come out of. Not to mention the fact that Jalen Ramsey is now gone, so you got one of the elite corners in the game that has left your defense, which means your defense is not as good as it once was. And you take all of those things into consideration. I just think the odds are stacked against them. I think Nick Foles can get them on a roll. I think they could be a 500 team, maybe go as far as 9-7. I can see them winning 5 of their last 7 games per se. But in order for them to make the playoffs, in my mind, I think they'd have to win 6 of their last 7 or all 7 in order to pull off a wild card spot, because they're not going to catch Houston, and I don't think they're going to do that.
I agree with you, Stephen A. I don't think they're too far in the hole. And two of the things we didn't mention is we don't actually know how Nick Foles is going to look. This is a shoulder. This is not one of those situations where you coming back from a lower leg injury where you can manipulate the pocket and try to help yourself. He's coming back from a shoulder that we really don't know how he's able to sustain. We saw Cam Newton deal with a shoulder, and it did not look good. So with the injury per se, I struggle with finding them a way into the playoffs. But being 4-5 right now with the strength of the AFC, it's going to be tough for the Jaguars to dig themselves out of this one.
I agree with you guys. Not going to be easy, but look at the role he went on with Philadelphia last year towards the end of the season. Look at the Super Bowl run he went on. He's done things that weren't easy where the odds were against him before. And Gardner Minshew, if you're going to bench him, I would assume Nick Foles is healthy, because he's shown enough, even if he regressed a little bit recently, maybe some of that magic wore off, he's shown enough where you're not going to start an injured guy over him. So I'm assuming, Marcus, that Nick Foles is back to himself. And what this question really is can he work his magic again? Once again, I don't think he can do it without the necessary pieces. But on a team like this, and Stephen A., they still have talent in the secondary. They still have defensive talent. On a defensively talented team with a running back and an improved offensive line, keeping the quarterback clean and blocking for your running back, when you have a guy like Fournette, I believe Nick Foles can get it done. He can do it. Odds are against him, but he's done it before.
All right, yeah, well, we know the odds are against him. Thank you for throwing in that caveat as your cushion point, as your cushion. All I'm trying to say is this. Nobody called the Jacksonville Jaguars scrubbed. Nobody said they can't win football games. What we're saying is when you're talking about them winning 6 of their last 7 or all 7 of their remaining games, that's Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes territory. When you're talking about something like that, that is a big, and I know that Nick Foles went on a run, but I'm just not that kind of run. The playoffs are different. I understand there's one and you're done and that's it. The regular season, you got to count on everybody showing up. I don't know about that, Max. I don't know about that.
Last year, the Eagles were a 500 team. Nick Foles took over. They went on precisely the run you're talking about and won a playoff game at Soldier Field against a team many people were predicting was going to get to the Super Bowl.
And how many times do you think they're going to do that?
Beat the Saints.
How many times do you think they could do that?
Well, I mean,
hold on, wait a minute. First of all, how many times do you think they're going to do that? And hold on. Secondly, the Jacksonville Jaguars, albeit talented, they're not scrubs. They weren't those Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't have that level of offensive talent available to them. They don't have that, Max.
You're not wrong, but he can lead a running-based offense, like a run-based offense, if you have a good offensive line. And I want to mention something. You said that's Tom Brady territory. Nick Foles beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Max,
Nick Foles has done that.
That doesn't mean he's Tom Brady.
Max, we talking about
Tom Brady threw for 500 yards when he lost that Super Bowl.
We talking about Jacksonville winning 6 of the last 7 or possibly 7 to get in, Max. They ain't winning 6 of the last 7, man.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.